Welcome to the Sleep Story Haven, your peaceful sanctuary where the whispers of ancient forests meet the gentle rhythm of moonlit shores. Here, time slows to the rhythm of your breathing. Worries dissolve like mist, and your mind finds the peace it's been seeking. Each story is crafted to guide you through enchanted landscapes and tranquil moments, designed to quiet your thoughts and prepare your spirit for deep, restorative sleep. So find your most comfortable position, close your eyes, and let tonight's gentle tale carry you to the peaceful dreams that await. Welcome to your Sleep Story Haven. Take a deep breath and let our story begin. Roman Villa Garden Retreat, a sleep story. Chapter 1, The Path to Ancient Peace. Elena walked slowly along the worn cobblestone path, her footsteps creating a gentle rhythm that seemed to match the beating of her weary heart. The Mediterranean sun filtered through ancient olive branches overhead, casting dancing shadows that moved like gentle waves across the weathered stones beneath her feet. Each step carried her further from the noise and urgency of her everyday world, deeper into a landscape that whispered of older, quieter times. The path wound through rolling hills dotted with cypress trees that stood like dark green sentinels against the azure sky. Their pointed tops swayed gently in the warm breeze, creating a soft, rustling sound that felt like nature's own lullaby. Elena paused to breathe deeply, filling her lungs with air that carried the mingled scents of wild rosemary, sun-warmed earth, and something indefinably ancient. As if the very molecules themselves held memories of countless peaceful moments. She had come here seeking something she couldn't quite name. Rest, perhaps. Peace, certainly. But more than that, a kind of restoration that went deeper than sleep, deeper even than the physical weariness that had driven her to this remote corner of the Italian countryside. Her body moved with the languid grace of someone finally allowing herself to slow down, to match her pace to the unhurried rhythm of the natural world around her. The path curved gently to the left, following the natural contours of the hillside. Wild lavender grew in purple clusters along the edges, releasing their soothing fragrance with each brush of the warm breeze. Elena found herself breathing more deeply, more slowly, as if her body was remembering how to truly rest. The tension that had lived in her shoulders for so long began to soften, like ice melting in gentle sunlight. As she rounded the curve, the landscape opened before her in a vista of rolling green hills that seemed to stretch endlessly toward the horizon. Scattered among the hills were the remnants of ancient terraces, their stone walls now softened by time and overgrown with wild herbs and flowering vines. The sight filled her with a profound sense of continuity, of being part of something much larger and older than her individual concerns. A small stone bridge crossed a meandering stream that bubbled and gurgled with quiet contentment. Elena paused on the bridge, resting her hands on the sun-warmed stone balustrade, and looked down into the clear water below. Smooth pebbles gleamed beneath the surface, and tiny fish darted between the underwater stones like living jewels. The sound of the water was hypnotic, a constant, gentle murmur that seemed to wash away the remnants of stress and worry that had followed her here. The air grew warmer and more fragrant as she continued along the path. Wild fennel released its anise scent as she brushed past, and somewhere in the distance, she could hear the soft cooing of doves. The sound drifted on the breeze like a musical blessing, adding to the growing sense of peace that seemed to emanate from the very stones beneath her feet. Elena noticed that her breathing had synchronized with her walking, creating a natural meditation in motion. Left foot forward, breathe in. Right foot forward, breathe out. The rhythm was ancient and comforting, connecting her to countless generations of travelers who had walked these same paths, seeking the same deep peace that seemed to live in the very essence of this place. The path began to descend gently, winding between terraced slopes where ancient olive trees grew in neat rows. Their silver-green leaves shimmered in the afternoon light, creating a visual rhythm that was as soothing as the sound of the distant stream. Some of the trees were clearly very old, their trunks thick and gnarled with age, their roots running deep into the sun-baked earth. They stood like patient guardians, witnesses to centuries of seasons, storms, and tranquil days like this one. As Elena walked between these ancient sentinels, she felt a profound sense of being welcomed into their timeless world. The trees seemed to emanate a deep, abiding peace, as if their long years of growing slowly in this blessed place had distilled within them the very essence of serenity. She found herself walking even more slowly, not wanting to disturb the profound quiet that surrounded her. The path curved again, following the natural lay of the land, and Elena noticed that the vegetation was becoming more lush and varied. Wild herbs grew in abundance: rosemary and thyme, oregano and sage, their fragrances mingling to create a natural aromatherapy that seemed designed to calm the mind and soothe the spirit. Butterflies danced from flower to flower, their wings catching the sunlight like tiny stained glass windows come to life. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves of a nearby fig tree, and Elena paused to listen to the soft, rustling sound. It reminded her of whispered secrets, of ancient stories being told in a language older than words. The breeze carried with it the promise of shade and rest, of fountains and gardens hidden just beyond the next turn in the path. She could feel her heartbeat slowing, matching the unhurried pace of this timeless place. Her thoughts, which had been racing like trapped birds just hours before, began to settle and quiet. The constant mental chatter that had become her unwelcome companion in recent months faded to a gentle murmur, then to blessed silence. The path wound through a grove of umbrella pines, their broad canopies creating pools of cool shade that felt like natural sanctuaries. Alina paused in one of these green rooms, looking up through the needle-covered branches to where patches of blue sky showed through like glimpses of heaven. The pine needles whispered softly in the breeze, creating a sound like gentle rain on leaves, peaceful and infinitely soothing. As she emerged from the pine grove, Alina noticed that the character of the landscape was beginning to change. The wild beauty of the hillsides was giving way to something more cultivated, more deliberately peaceful. She could see evidence of ancient human habitation, a crumbling stone wall here, the remains of what might once have been a garden terrace there. But far from detracting from the natural beauty, these remnants seemed to enhance it, as if human hands had once worked in harmony with nature to create something even more beautiful than either could achieve alone. The path broadened slightly, and Alina could see that the stones beneath her feet were more carefully laid, worn smooth by centuries of use, but still maintaining their deliberate pattern. This was no longer a simple country track, but the approach to something more significant, more intentionally designed for peace and contemplation. The afternoon sun slanted through the trees at a lower angle now, painting everything with a warm, golden light that seemed to come from within the very stones and leaves. Alina felt as if she were walking through a living painting, every element perfectly placed to create maximum beauty and tranquility. Her steps became even slower, more reverent, as if she were approaching something sacred. The scent of water reached her before she could see its source, a fresh, clean smell that spoke of springs and fountains, of cool stone and flowing streams. Mixed with it was the fragrance of herbs and flowers, suggesting gardens and cultivated beauty ahead. Alina's pulse quickened slightly with anticipation, but it was a peaceful excitement, like the flutter of joy that comes with the promise of rest after a long journey. As the path curved once more, she caught her first glimpse of what lay ahead. Through the trees, she could see the corner of what appeared to be an ancient stone wall, partially covered with flowering vines. The wall was built in the Roman style, with carefully fitted stones that had aged to a warm, honey color in the Mediterranean sun. It spoke of permanence and peace, of a place designed to endure through centuries, while maintaining its essential character as a sanctuary for the weary soul. Alina paused at this first glimpse of her destination, feeling a profound sense of homecoming, even though she had never been here before. Something in the quality of the light, the arrangement of the stones, the very air itself seemed to welcome her, to promise the deep rest and restoration she had been seeking without fully knowing what she sought. The path continued its gentle descent, and with each step, Alina felt herself sinking deeper into a state of peaceful receptivity. The constant vigilance that had become her default state in the busy world she had left behind began to dissolve, replaced by a profound trust in the benevolent nature of this ancient place. Here, she sensed, was somewhere she could finally, truly rest. The sound of trickling water grew stronger, accompanied now by the gentle splash of fountains and the soft echo of water flowing through stone channels. These sounds wove together to create a natural symphony of peace, an acoustic backdrop designed to quiet the mind and soothe the spirit. Alina found herself walking in rhythm with these water sounds, her entire being beginning to synchronize with the ancient rhythms of this timeless place. As she rounded the final curve in the path, the full vista of the Roman villa complex opened before her, and Alina stopped, breathing deeply as she took in the sight that would be her sanctuary for the transformative journey ahead. Chapter 2: Discovering the Hidden Villa. The villa revealed itself slowly, like a secret being whispered to a trusted friend. Alina stood at the crest of the final curve in the path, her eyes drinking in the sight that stretched before her in the golden afternoon light. The complex seemed to emerge naturally from the landscape itself, as if it had grown rather than been built, as if the earth had simply shaped itself into walls and courtyards in response to some ancient longing for perfect peace. The main structure was built in the classic Roman style, but softened and mellowed by centuries of weather and the gentle overgrowth of climbing plants. Honey-colored stone walls rose from terraced gardens, their surfaces worn smooth by time and weather into curves that seemed almost organic. Red tile roofs caught the slanting sunlight, glowing like burnished copper against the deep blue of the Mediterranean sky. What struck Alina most profoundly was the way the villa seemed to breathe with the landscape around it. Walls curved to follow the natural contours of the hillside. Gardens flowed seamlessly into wild meadows. Fountains and pools reflected not only the sky above, but seemed to mirror the very essence of tranquility itself. This was architecture that honored the peace of the natural world rather than imposing upon it. She began her descent toward the villa, following a path paved with ancient stones that had been worn smooth by countless footsteps over the centuries. Each stone was slightly different in color and texture, creating a subtle mosaic that was pleasing to the eye and somehow soothing to the soul. Alina found herself looking down at her feet as she walked, mesmerized by the way. The stones seemed to flow together like a gentle river frozen in time. The first garden she encountered was an herb garden, laid out in neat geometric patterns that spoke of careful cultivation, while maintaining an air of abundant natural growth. Lavender grew in purple waves beside silver-leaved sage and deep green rosemary. The plants seemed to thrive in the warm stone planters, their roots deep in soil that had been enriched by centuries of careful tending. The fragrances that rose from these plants created a natural aromatherapy that seemed designed to slow the breathing and quiet the mind. Alina paused beside a particularly large lavender plant, its purple spikes heavy with flowers that hummed gently with the activity of contented bees. She reached out to touch one of the flower spikes, releasing a burst of soothing fragrance that seemed to flow directly from her fingertips to her brain, bypassing all conscious thought and speaking directly to some deeper, more primitive part of her being that remembered what it felt like to be truly at peace. The path wound between raised beds filled with herbs she recognized, and others that were unfamiliar but equally fragrant. Lemon verbena released its citrus scent as she brushed past. Chamomile created small daisy-like flowers that seemed to nod in greeting as she passed. Wild thyme grew in fragrant carpets between the stones, releasing its earthy sweetness with each footstep. As she moved deeper into the garden, Alina became aware of the sound of water, not the distant murmur she had heard on the path, but the more intimate sound of water moving through carefully designed channels and basins. The sound drew her forward, promising not just the sight of water, but the deeper peace that comes from watching its eternal flow. The herb garden opened into a larger courtyard, dominated by a central fountain. The fountain was clearly ancient, its stone basin carved with simple but elegant designs that had been softened by centuries of water flow. Water bubbled up from the center, creating gentle ripples that caught and reflected the afternoon light in constantly shifting patterns. The sound of the water was hypnotic, a constant, gentle conversation between water and stone that seemed to speak directly to something deep within Alina's chest, loosening knots of tension she hadn't even known she was carrying. Around the fountain, comfortable stone benches were placed at intervals, their surfaces worn smooth by countless hours of peaceful contemplation. Alina sank onto one of these benches, feeling the warmth of the sun-heated stone seep through her clothing and into her muscles. The position gave her a perfect view of the fountain, while also allowing her to see into the other gardens and courtyards that branched off from this central space. She closed her eyes and listened to the layered sounds around her. The fountain's gentle babbling formed the foundation, but above it, she could hear the soft rustling of leaves in the breeze, the distant cooing of doves, the gentle hum of bees moving from flower to flower. These sounds wove together to create a natural symphony that seemed designed to slow the heart rate and deepen the breathing, to guide the listener into increasingly profound states of relaxation. When Alina opened her eyes, she found herself looking across the courtyard toward what appeared to be the main living area of the villa. The building was low and sprawling, its rooms opening directly onto the gardens through a series of arched doorways. The architecture invited a seamless flow between indoor and outdoor spaces, between the cultivated peace of the gardens and the sheltered tranquility of the interior rooms. The walls of the building were painted in soft, earthy tones that seemed to glow in the afternoon light. Warm terracotta, pale gold, and the softest green created a palette that was both sophisticated and deeply soothing. The colors seemed to change subtly as the light shifted, creating a living artwork that was never quite the same from moment to moment, but always perfectly harmonious. Climbing roses grew up the walls in some places, their soft pink blooms releasing a fragrance that mixed with the herb scents to create something even more complex and beautiful. The roses were clearly old varieties, their blooms fuller and more fragrant than modern hybrids, as if they too had been chosen for their ability to contribute to the overall sense of timeless peace that pervaded the villa. Alina rose from the bench and began to explore the other areas that branched off from the central courtyard. To her left, she discovered a smaller, more intimate garden space enclosed by low stone walls. This garden was planted with what appeared to be medicinal herbs, plants whose very presence seemed to promise healing and restoration. Echinacea and calendula grew in neat rows, their bright flowers like spots of concentrated sunshine. Lemon balm released its calming scent as she brushed against it. And somewhere in the corner, she spotted the distinctive leaves of what might be valerian, the ancient herb of sleep and dreams. This healing garden was dominated by its own smaller fountain, this one designed more like a natural spring. Water bubbled up through a crack in what appeared to be natural rock, then flowed down a series of stone steps into a small pool lined with smooth pebbles. The sound was even more intimate than the larger fountain, more like the whisper of a secret than the conversation of the central courtyard. Alina knelt beside this smaller pool and dipped her fingers into the water. It was cool, but not cold, perfect for washing away the dust of travel and the residue of everyday concerns. As she cupped the water in her hands and brought it to her face, she felt something shift within her, a deeper letting go, as if the water itself possessed some quality that could wash away more than just physical dust. Beyond the healing garden, Alina discovered another courtyard, this one paved entirely in smooth stone and dominated by what appeared to be a sunken garden. Steps led down into a circular space where aromatic plants grew in terraced rings around a central meditation area. The design drew the eye inward and downward, creating a natural focal point for contemplation and inner reflection. The plants in this sunken garden were chosen for their soothing properties and their ability to create a sense of enclosure and privacy. Silvery artemisia grew in soft mounds beside deep purple lavender. White jasmine climbed the retaining walls, its star-shaped flowers promising evening fragrance and peaceful dreams. The overall effect was of a natural amphitheater designed for inner exploration and deep rest. Alina descended the steps into this circular sanctuary, feeling the temperature drop slightly as she moved below the level of the surrounding courtyard. The stone walls blocked the breeze, but retained the warmth of the day, creating a microclimate that felt like a gentle embrace. At the center of the space, a small round platform seemed designed for sitting or lying, its stone surface worn smooth and warmed by centuries of Mediterranean sun. She settled onto this central platform and looked up at the circle of sky visible above the garden walls. The perspective created a natural mandala, with the plants and walls forming concentric circles that seemed to draw her consciousness inward, toward a center of stillness and peace that had been there all along, waiting to be rediscovered. The afternoon light was beginning to shift toward evening, painting the stone walls with increasingly warm tones. Alina could feel her body settling more deeply into relaxation with each passing moment, as if the villa itself was teaching her how to rest, how to let go of the constant vigilance and effort that had become her default state in the world beyond these walls. From her position in the sunken garden, she could hear the various fountains of the villa creating their layered symphony of peace. Each fountain had its own voice and rhythm, but together they created something larger and more complex, a soundscape that seemed designed to guide the listener into deeper and deeper states of tranquil awareness. As the sun continued its descent toward the horizon, Alina realized that she had found something she hadn't even known she was looking for. This villa wasn't just a beautiful place. It was a sanctuary, specifically designed to heal the kinds of wounds that the modern world inflicts on the human spirit. Every element, from the placement of the fountains, to the choice of plants, to the very stones beneath her feet, seemed chosen for its ability to restore balance and peace to anyone fortunate enough to find their way here. She closed her eyes and allowed herself to sink even more deeply into the embrace of this ancient place, feeling the first stirrings of a transformation that would unfold over the days to come. Chapter 3: The Fountain's Gentle Song. The evening air grew soft and golden as Alina rose from the sunken garden and began to explore the villa more deeply. The quality of light had shifted from the bright clarity of afternoon to something warmer and more diffuse, as if the very air had been infused with honey and cream. This magical hour painted everything with a gentle radiance that seemed to come from within the stones themselves, transforming the already peaceful villa into something that approached the realm of dreams. She followed the sound of water, which seemed to come from multiple directions at once, creating a complex audio tapestry that guided her movement through the interconnected spaces of the villa. Each fountain had its own distinct voice, some bubbling gently like contented brooks, others creating the soft splash of water falling from one level to another, and still others producing the intimate whisper of water flowing through narrow channels carved into the ancient stone. The path led her to what appeared to be the heart of the villa's water system, a large courtyard where multiple fountains worked in harmony to create a natural cooling system that had been functioning for nearly 2,000 years. The engineering was elegant in its simplicity, using gravity and carefully calculated angles to move water throughout the complex without any mechanical assistance. But more than just functional, the system had been designed as a work of art, a meditation on the beauty and necessity of water in human life. The largest fountain in this courtyard was a masterpiece of ancient hydraulic engineering and aesthetic beauty. Water emerged from multiple sources within a carved stone basin, each jet calculated to create a specific sound and visual effect. Some water bubbled up gently from the center, creating expanding circles of ripples that caught and reflected the golden light. Other streams arced gracefully through the air before falling back into the basin with soft splashes that added percussion to the fountain's gentle song. Alina approached the fountain slowly, drawn by something that went beyond mere curiosity. The sound of the water seemed to resonate not just in her ears, but in her chest, creating a vibration that matched, and then gradually slowed her heartbeat. As she drew closer, she could feel the fine mist that rose from the falling water, cooling her skin and adding a subtle humidity to the dry Mediterranean air that was deeply soothing to her respiratory system. The basin of the fountain was carved from a single piece of what appeared to be local stone, its surface polished smooth by centuries of flowing water. The rim was wide enough to sit on comfortably, and Alina could see that countless others had done exactly that, wearing the stone into curves that perfectly accommodated the human form. She settled onto this natural seat, feeling the cool smoothness of the water-worn stone beneath her and the gentle warmth of the evening air on her face. From this position, she could observe the fountain's complex dance of water and light. The multiple streams and bubbles created constantly changing patterns, never quite the same from moment to moment, but always maintaining the same essential harmony. It was like watching a living mandala, a meditation in motion that seemed designed to quiet the analytical mind and awaken a deeper, more intuitive way of seeing. The sound of the fountain was layered and complex, creating what acousticians call a brown noise, a natural sound frequency that promotes relaxation and can even aid in sleep. But this was brown noise elevated to an art form, with subtle variations in pitch and rhythm that kept the sound interesting without ever becoming stimulating or demanding of attention. Alina found herself breathing more slowly and deeply as she listened, her entire nervous system gradually downshifting into a state of profound relaxation. As she sat beside the fountain, Alina became aware of how the water system connected all the different areas of the villa. Narrow channels carved into the stone floors carried water from the central fountain to smaller fountains in other courtyards. The channels were shallow, allowing the water to flow in thin sheets that caught the light and created gentle sounds as they moved over the textured stone. Following these water channels with her eyes, Alina could see how they connected the villa into a unified whole, each area nourished by the same source. The engineering of the system was brilliant, but it was the aesthetic choices that made it truly extraordinary. Every channel, every basin, every spout had been shaped with an artist's eye for beauty, as well as an engineer's understanding of function. The result was a water system that was both perfectly practical and deeply moving to experience. A reminder that human beings are capable of creating works of enduring beauty when they build in harmony with natural principles. As the sun continued its descent toward the horizon, the light filtering through the water began to create new patterns of beauty. The falling droplets became tiny prisms, breaking the golden light into rainbow fragments that danced on the surface of the basin. Alina found herself mesmerized by these light shows, her consciousness gradually shifting into a state that was more receptive than analytical, more appreciative than acquisitive. A gentle breeze stirred the air, carrying with it the mingled fragrances of the surrounding gardens. The scent of jasmine was beginning to emerge as the evening cooled, mixing with the constant backdrop of lavender and rosemary to create something complex and deeply soothing. Alina breathed deeply, feeling these natural aromatherapy compounds working their ancient magic on her nervous system, helping to dissolve the last vestiges of tension and stress that had followed her here from her ordinary life. The fountain's song seemed to change subtly as the evening progressed, though Alina couldn't quite identify how. Perhaps it was simply that her hearing was becoming more attuned to its nuances, or perhaps the changing air pressure and humidity of the cooling evening were actually affecting the sound. Whatever the cause, she found herself sinking deeper and deeper into a state of peaceful absorption, her mind becoming as still and reflective as the surface of a quiet pond. She began to notice other sounds woven into the fountain's song. The distant cooing of doves settling into their evening roosts, the soft rustle of leaves in the cooling breeze, the gentle hum of insects beginning their twilight activities. These sounds didn't compete with the fountain, but rather harmonized with it, creating a natural symphony that seemed to celebrate the peaceful transition from day to night. As she listened, Alina realized that she was experiencing something she had almost forgotten existed, a state of being that was completely present, completely at peace, completely free from the anxiety and restlessness that had become her constant companions. The fountain's gentle song was working like a tuning fork on her consciousness, helping her remember frequencies of peace and contentment that had been drowned out by the noise of modern life. The water continued its eternal dance, indifferent to her presence, but somehow nurturing it, like the best kind of hospitality that provides for the guest's needs without calling attention to itself. Alina felt held by the sound, supported by it in a way that went beyond the merely physical. The fountain's song was weaving itself into her breathing, her heartbeat, the very rhythm of her thoughts, slowly synchronizing all her internal processes to the ancient, peaceful tempo of flowing water. As the first stars began to appear in the deepening sky above, Alina realized that she had been sitting by the fountain for what felt like both moments and hours. Time seemed to move differently here, stretching and contracting according to some internal rhythm, rather than the mechanical demands of clocks and schedules. She felt no impatience, no urge to move or do anything other than continue sitting in this perfect moment, listening to the fountain's gentle song and feeling her soul gradually remember what it meant to be truly at rest. The fountain continued its eternal conversation between water and stone, between movement and stillness, between sound and silence. And Alina, sitting on the time-worn rim of its basin, felt herself becoming part of that conversation, her own being gradually aligning with the ancient rhythms that had been bringing peace to human hearts for nearly 2 millennia. Chapter 4: Wandering Through Herb Gardens. As the stars began to emerge more clearly in the darkening sky above, Alina felt drawn to explore the villa's gardens more thoroughly. The fountain's song continued to provide a gentle acoustic backdrop as she rose from her stone seat. But now, she could hear other subtle sounds calling to her. The whisper of leaves brushing against stone, the soft rustle of small creatures moving through the herb beds, the distant trickle of water following its ancient channels throughout the complex. The evening air had cooled to the perfect temperature for walking, neither too warm nor too cool, like a gentle embrace that moved with her as she stepped away from the central fountain. The paths between the gardens were lit by small oil lamps that had been placed at intervals along the walkways, their warm, flickering light creating pools of golden illumination that made the journey between spaces feel like a meditation on the nature of light and shadow. Alina's first destination was what appeared to be the villa's main herb garden, a formal space laid out in geometric patterns that spoke of centuries of careful cultivation. The garden was arranged in raised beds separated by narrow pathways, each bed dedicated to a different family of herbs or a different purpose. Even in the growing darkness, the fragrances that rose from these beds were intoxicating, creating a natural aromatherapy experience that seemed designed to deepen the relaxation that had already begun to transform her entire being. She entered the garden through an archway formed by climbing rosemary plants that had been trained to grow over a wooden frame. The woody stems were thick with age, and the small blue flowers released their resinous fragrance as she passed beneath them. The scent was simultaneously stimulating and calming, sharp enough to clear the mind, but warm enough to comfort the heart. A perfect introduction to the treasures that lay beyond. The first bed contained culinary herbs, plants that would have been essential for the ancient kitchen of the villa. Bay laurel grew in neat, silvery green bushes, their leaves releasing a subtle spicy fragrance when touched. Oregano cascaded over the edges of the raised bed in fragrant waterfalls, its tiny flowers providing nectar for the moths that were beginning to emerge in the cooling air. Sweet basil grew in several varieties, from the familiar green to deep purple cultivars, each adding its own note to the garden's complex olfactory symphony. Alina found herself moving more slowly than usual, pausing frequently to breathe deeply and allow the fragrances to work their subtle magic on her nervous system. These plants had been humanity's pharmacy for millennia, and even in their living state, they seemed to radiate healing energy. Her body responded to their presence at a level deeper than conscious thought. her breathing becoming slower and more rhythmic, her muscles releasing tension she hadn't even known she was carrying. The next bed was devoted to what appeared to be medicinal herbs, plants chosen for their ability to heal and restore balance to the human system. Chamomile grew in feathery mounds, its small white flowers glowing like tiny stars in the lamplight. The scent was immediately recognizable and deeply comforting, triggering memories of childhood bedtime teas and gentle remedies for minor ailments. Beside the chamomile, lemon balm released its citrusy fragrance. Known for its ability to calm anxiety and promote peaceful sleep, Alina knelt beside the lemon balm and gently cupped one of its leaves in her palm, breathing in the concentrated essence of its healing properties. The fragrance seemed to travel directly from her olfactory system to her brain, bypassing rational thought and speaking directly to the parts of her nervous system responsible for rest and repair. She could feel her shoulders dropping, her jaw unclenching, her entire body beginning to shift into the parasympathetic state that allows for true healing and restoration. Further along the path, she discovered a bed devoted entirely to plants known for their sedative and sleep-promoting properties. Lavender grew here in several varieties, from the familiar English lavender to more exotic cultivars with deeper purple flowers and more complex fragrances. The plants were clearly ancient, their woody stems thick with age, and their root systems deep and well established. They seemed to emanate peace and contentment, as if their long years of growing in this blessed place had concentrated within them the very essence of tranquility. Beside the lavender, Alina found what appeared to be valerian, its tall stems topped with clusters of small white flowers that released a distinctive earthy fragrance. This plant had been used as a natural sedative for thousands of years, and even its living presence seemed to have a calming effect on Alina's nervous system. She found herself yawning as she breathed in its scent, her body's natural wisdom recognizing and responding to the plant's healing properties. The herb garden's design was as therapeutic as its contents. The raised beds were constructed from the same honey-colored stone as the villa's walls, retaining the day's heat and releasing it slowly as the evening cooled. The warmth rising from the stones created gentle air currents that lifted the plant fragrances and carried them throughout the garden, creating a natural aromatherapy experience that seemed to envelope Alina in healing energy. Between the beds, narrow channels carried water from the central fountain system, providing irrigation for the plants, while also adding the gentle sound of flowing water to the garden's sensory environment. The channels were lined with small stones that created tiny waterfalls and rapids, increasing the surface area of the flowing water and enhancing its cooling and humidifying effects on the air. Alina followed one of these channels as it wound through the garden, marveling at the ingenuity of the ancient designers who had created a system that was both beautiful and perfectly functional. The water moved slowly enough to be absorbed by the plant roots, but fast enough to prevent stagnation, maintaining the perfect balance necessary for healthy plant growth and maximum fragrance production. As she walked deeper into the herb garden, Alina encountered beds devoted to plants she didn't immediately recognize, but which seemed to radiate the same peaceful energy as their more familiar companions. Some had silvery leaves that glowed in the lamplight like living metal. Others produced small, star-shaped flowers that released complex fragrances, combining floral, herbal, and slightly spicy notes. Each plant seemed to have been chosen not just for its individual properties, but for its ability to harmonize with its neighbors, creating combinations of scents that were more beautiful and therapeutic than any single plant could achieve alone. At the heart of the herb garden, Alina discovered a circular space where a small fountain bubbled gently among plants that seemed to have been chosen specifically for their ability to release fragrance in the evening air. Night-blooming jasmine climbed a small trellis, its star-shaped flowers just beginning to open and release their intoxicating perfume. Evening primrose glowed pale yellow in the lamplight, its flowers opening as she watched, releasing a sweet fragrance that mixed with the jasmine to create something almost otherworldly in its beauty. Alina settled onto a stone bench, positioned to take full advantage of this evening garden, feeling the day's warmth still radiating from the stone beneath her. The combination of fragrances surrounding her was like a natural symphony performed by the plants themselves, each scent adding its own note to a composition that seemed designed to guide the human nervous system into increasingly deep states of relaxation and peace. As she sat in the heart of the herb garden, surrounded by centuries of accumulated wisdom about the healing properties of plants, Alina felt something fundamental shifting within her consciousness. The constant mental chatter that had become her unwelcome companion was fading to a gentle whisper, replaced by a profound awareness of the present moment and the extraordinary gift of being exactly where she was, exactly when she was there. The herb garden continued its gentle work around her, the plants releasing their healing fragrances into the night air, the water channels murmuring their soft songs, the ancient stones radiating their stored warmth into the cooling evening. And Alina, held in the embrace of this living pharmacy, felt her body and mind beginning the process of remembering what it meant to be truly, deeply at peace. Chapter 5. the warmth of ancient stones. The night air carried a subtle chill that made the warmth radiating from the villas. Ancient stones feel like a gentle embrace. Alina moved through the herb garden, feeling increasingly aware of the thermal qualities of the space around her. How the stones beneath her feet retained and slowly released the day's accumulated heat. How the walls created microclimates that trapped warmth, while allowing cooling breezes to flow through at the perfect height. How every surface seemed to have been designed to maintain the ideal temperature for human comfort and plant growth. As she walked, Alina began to understand that she was experiencing one of the most sophisticated passive climate control systems ever created. The Romans had been masters of thermal dynamics, and this villa represented their knowledge at its most refined. But more than just functional, the system had been designed to create a sensory experience that promoted deep relaxation and healing. Every warm stone, every cool breeze, every thermal variation carefully calculated to support the human nervous system's natural rhythms. She paused beside one of the garden's retaining walls and placed her palm against the stone surface. The warmth that met her hand was gentle but persistent, like the touch of a caring friend. The stone had been absorbing heat from the Mediterranean sun all day, and now it was releasing that energy slowly and steadily into the cooling evening air. Alina found herself leaning into the wall, allowing the warmth to penetrate her clothing and reach her skin, feeling tension dissolve as the heat worked its way into her muscles. The stones varied in their warmth, depending on their exposure to the day's sun and their thermal mass. The larger stones held heat longer, creating consistent warm spots that would remain comfortable well into the night. Smaller stones cooled more quickly, providing contrast and preventing the overall temperature from becoming too uniform or overwhelming. Alina found herself naturally gravitating toward these warm stone surfaces, her body's ancient wisdom recognizing them as sources of healing comfort. She discovered a curved stone bench that had been positioned to catch the maximum amount of afternoon sun. And as she settled onto its welcoming surface, she could feel the warmth seeping through her clothing and into her lower back, releasing knots of tension that had been building there for months. The bench was positioned with perfect sight lines to multiple fountains, allowing her to watch the interplay of water and stone while feeling the thermal embrace of the ancient architecture. The warm stone beneath her seemed to pulse gently with stored solar energy, creating a rhythm that gradually synchronized with her own heartbeat and breathing. It was as if the villa itself was breathing, inhaling sunlight during the day and exhaling warmth and peace throughout the night. As Alina sat on the sun-warmed bench, she became increasingly aware of the sophisticated understanding of human comfort that had gone into every aspect of the villa's design. The Romans had understood that true relaxation requires not just visual and auditory beauty, but a complete sensory environment that supports the body's natural processes of rest and restoration. The warmth of the stones was a crucial element in this carefully orchestrated experience. She rose from the bench and began to explore other thermal experiences within the villa complex. A flagstone pathway that had been exposed to the full intensity of the afternoon sun still retained enough warmth to be pleasant beneath her feet, even through her shoes. The warmth traveled up through her body, creating a subtle but profound sense of being supported and nurtured by the very ground she walked upon. Alina discovered that different areas of the villa offered different thermal experiences, creating a varied landscape of comfort that could accommodate different needs and preferences. Some courtyards were designed to trap heat and maintain warmth well into the evening, while others allowed for more airflow and cooling. The transitions between these thermal zones were gradual and natural, preventing the jarring contrasts that can disturb the nervous system's delicate balance. In one smaller courtyard, she found what appeared to be a thermal meditation space, a circular area paved with dark stone that had absorbed intensive heat during the day. The stones here were noticeably warmer than elsewhere, creating a natural gathering spot for evening contemplation. The warmth rising from the stones created gentle air currents that carried the fragrances of nearby herbs upward, creating a natural aromatherapy experience that was both grounding and elevating. Alina removed her shoes and stepped onto the warm stones with her bare feet, feeling an immediate sense of connection with the earth and the ancient wisdom embedded in this place. The warmth traveled up through her feet and legs, creating a sensation of being literally supported by the accumulated energy of countless Mediterranean days. Her breathing deepened automatically, and she felt her entire nervous system downshifting into a state of profound relaxation. The thermal courtyard was surrounded by low walls that had also retained significant heat from the day's exposure to the sun. Alina leaned against one of these walls, feeling the warmth penetrate her back and shoulders, melting away layers of tension that had accumulated over years of stress and hurried living. The stone seemed to pulse gently with life-giving energy, as if it were alive and consciously offering its stored warmth as a gift to anyone wise enough to receive it. As she explored further, Alina discovered that the villa's thermal design extended even to the interior spaces. Rooms opened directly onto the warm stone courtyards, allowing the heat stored in the outdoor pavements to flow naturally into the living areas. The transition from outdoor to indoor was so gradual that it felt more like moving from one natural environment to another, rather than entering a building in any conventional sense. The interior floors were made of the same warm stone as the courtyards, creating a continuous thermal experience that unified the entire complex. Alina walked through several rooms, feeling the warmth of the ancient stones beneath her feet and marveling at how the temperature remained perfectly comfortable despite the cooling evening air outside. The thermal mass of the stones provided natural climate control that was both more effective and more pleasant than any modern system could achieve. In what appeared to be a meditation room, Alina found a raised platform made of particularly dark stone that had retained exceptional warmth. The platform was clearly designed for lying down, its surface worn smooth by centuries of use and heated to the perfect temperature for deep relaxation. She settled onto this natural heating pad, feeling the warmth penetrate every muscle and joint, dissolving tension at levels so deep she hadn't even been aware it existed. The warm stone platform seemed to cradle her body perfectly, its contours shaped by countless others who had sought the same deep restoration she was experiencing. The heat worked its way into her bones, creating a sensation of being held and nurtured by the earth itself. Alina's breathing became even slower and deeper, her body naturally responding to the therapeutic warmth by releasing into a state of profound trust and relaxation. Above her, the ceiling was painted in soft, warm colors that seemed to glow in the gentle lamplight. The colors, deep terracotta, pale gold, and the softest cream, created a visual warmth that complemented the physical warmth of the stones, surrounding her in an environment that was completely supportive of rest and healing. As she lay on the warm stone platform, Alina became aware of how the thermal experiences of the villa were working in harmony with all its other sensory elements. The warmth of the stones enhanced the soothing effects of the water sounds, making them seem even more peaceful and restorative. The heat seemed to intensify the fragrances of the herbs, making their aromatherapy effects more powerful and immediate. The villa was revealing itself to be not just a beautiful place, but a healing environment in the truest sense, a space where every element had been carefully designed to support the human body's natural capacity for rest, restoration, and renewal. The warm stones were a crucial component in this healing system, providing the deep, penetrating comfort that allows the nervous system to completely let go and enter states of profound peace. Alina closed her eyes and allowed herself to sink even more deeply into the embrace of the warm stone platform, feeling the accumulated wisdom of nearly 2,000 years of healing practices flowing into her bones, her muscles, her very cells. The villa was teaching her, stone by warm stone, what it meant to be truly supported, truly held, truly at rest. Chapter 6: Evening Light and Peaceful Shadows. The transition from day to evening at the villa was a masterpiece of natural theater, unfolding with the slow grace of a meditation in motion. Alina watched from her warm stone platform as the quality of light began its subtle transformation, shifting from the bright clarity of day to something softer, more golden, more conducive to the deep rest that was beginning to claim her entire being. The villa's architecture had been designed to celebrate these daily light transitions, with carefully placed openings and surfaces that captured and reflected the changing illumination in ways that enhanced rather than fought the natural rhythms of sunset. As the sun descended toward the horizon, its rays struck the honey-colored stones at increasingly acute angles, causing them to glow as if lit from within by some inner fire. Alina rose from the meditation platform and moved to where she could better observe this daily transformation. The walls and columns of the villa seemed to come alive in the slanted evening light, their surfaces revealing textures and details that had been invisible in the flat illumination of midday. Every small imperfection in the ancient stones, every subtle variation in color and grain, became part of a larger tapestry of beauty that spoke of centuries of patient weathering and the kind of aging that only improves with time. The shadows, too, were becoming part of the villa's evening performance. As the sun's angle changed, shadows grew longer and softer, creating pools of cooler air and darker spaces that provided perfect contrast to the warm, illuminated areas. These shadows weren't harsh or stark, but gentle and inviting, offering refuge and variety within the overall harmony of the space. Alina found herself drawn to these shadow areas, discovering that they offered their own unique form of comfort and peace. The temperature in the shadows was noticeably cooler, providing relief from the warmth of the sun-heated stones when needed. But more than just physically comfortable, the shadows created a sense of enclosure and privacy that was deeply soothing to something in her spirit that had been overstimulated by too much exposure, too much brightness, too much constant visibility. She settled into a shadowy alcove created by the intersection of two walls, feeling immediately embraced by the cooler, dimmer environment. The contrast with the bright courtyard beyond was gentle rather than jarring, creating a natural rhythm of light and shadow that seemed to mirror the body's own circadian rhythms. In this quiet, shaded space, Alina felt her eyes relax, her nervous system downshift even further, her entire being settle into a state of receptive quietude. From her position in the shadows, she could observe the way the evening light played across the various water features of the villa. The fountains became liquid sculptures as the golden light struck their streams and sprays, transforming the falling water into cascades of molten gold. The surfaces of the pools and basins reflected the changing sky, creating mirrors that doubled the beauty of the evening light and made the entire complex feel like it was floating in a sea of warm illumination. The interplay between light and water created constantly shifting patterns of reflection and refraction that were mesmerizing to watch. Alina found her breathing slowing even further as she observed these natural light shows, her consciousness gradually shifting into a state that was more receptive than analytical, more appreciative than active. The beauty unfolding before her required nothing from her except presence and appreciation. A perfect invitation to let go of the constant doing and achieving that had dominated her life for so long. As the sun continued its descent, the colors of the evening light began to warm and deepen. The pale gold of late afternoon gave way to richer, more saturated tones, deep amber, burnished copper, and eventually the warm orange and pink of true sunset. These colors painted themselves across every surface of the villa, transforming the already peaceful space into something that approached the magical. Alina emerged from her shadowy alcove to walk through the villa as it underwent this evening transformation. Each courtyard revealed new aspects of its beauty as the light changed. In the herb garden, the silver-leaved plants seemed to glow with their own inner light, while the darker foliage created rich, velvety shadows that invited touch and contemplation. The flowers that had seemed bright and cheerful in the daylight now revealed more subtle, complex colors that were somehow more beautiful for being less obvious. The central fountain became a sculpture of living light as the evening sun struck it from the west. The falling water caught and scattered the golden rays, creating a display that was part rainbow, part fireworks, and part prayer made visible. Alina stood transfixed by this natural light show, feeling something in her chest open and expand in response to the pure beauty of the moment. She began to understand that the villa's relationship with light was one of its most sophisticated and healing aspects. The ancient designers had understood that human well-being is intimately connected to light exposure, and that the quality of light in a space can profoundly influence mood, energy, and overall health. They had created an environment that honored and celebrated the full spectrum of natural light, from the bright clarity of morning through the warm gold of evening to the gentle silver of moonlight. As the official sunset approached, Alina found herself drawn to a higher terrace that offered a clear view to the west. The terrace was paved with stones that had been arranged in a subtle pattern that seemed to flow like water toward the horizon. The evening light struck these stones at the perfect angle to reveal their natural beauty, while creating shadows that guided the eye toward the most beautiful views. From this elevated position, Alina could see how the villa was situated within the larger landscape, how it had been positioned to take maximum advantage of the daily light show that played across the surrounding hills and valleys. The builders had chosen this location not just for its beauty, but for its relationship to the sun's daily path across the sky, ensuring that every hour of the day would bring new revelations of beauty and new opportunities for contemplation and peace. The sunset itself, when it came, was spectacular, but not overwhelming. The villa's design seemed to frame and enhance the natural beauty of the evening sky without competing with it or trying to upstage it. The warm colors of the sky were reflected and amplified by the honey-colored stones, creating a harmony between architecture and nature that was both stunning and deeply peaceful. As the sun touched the horizon, Alina felt a profound sense of completion and satisfaction, as if she had participated in something sacred and eternal. The daily cycle of light and shadow, of warming and cooling, of bright clarity and gentle dimness, was one of the most fundamental rhythms of life on Earth. And the villa had been designed to help its inhabitants align themselves with this natural rhythm in the most beautiful and healing way possible. The last rays of direct sunlight painted the villa's walls with warm copper and rose tones, creating a glow that seemed to emanate from the stones themselves. Alina felt bathed in this gentle radiance, her entire being infused with the peace and beauty of the moment. As the sun finally disappeared below the horizon, leaving behind a sky painted in soft pastels, she knew that the villa's evening magic was just beginning. The transition to twilight would bring new beauties, new opportunities for rest and restoration, new ways of experiencing the profound peace that seemed to live in the very stones and water and growing things of this ancient sanctuary. Chapter 7: Nightfall and the Dance of Gentle Breezes. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, a new phase of the villa's daily rhythm began to unfold. The absence of direct sunlight didn't mark an ending, but rather a transformation, as the space revealed new aspects of its beauty and began to offer different kinds of comfort and peace. Alina watched from the terrace as the transition from day to night unfolded with the same gentle grace that characterized everything about this extraordinary place. The first change she noticed was in the quality of the air itself. As the evening cooled, subtle breezes began to stir, carrying with them new fragrances and creating gentle air currents that moved through the villa's courtyards and corridors like invisible rivers of comfort. These breezes weren't random or chaotic, but seemed to follow patterns that had been designed into the villa's architecture, flowing through carefully placed openings and around strategically positioned walls to create a natural ventilation system that was both functional and deeply soothing. Alina descended from the terrace and began to explore how these evening breezes moved through the different spaces of the villa. In the herb garden, the cooling air stirred the plants gently, releasing fresh waves of fragrance that mixed and mingled to create new aromatic combinations. The lavender seemed particularly responsive to the evening breeze, its flower spikes swaying in gentle unison like a chorus of purple dancers celebrating the arrival of night. The breezes carried the fragrances of the herbs throughout the villa, creating a natural aromatherapy system that seemed designed to promote deep relaxation and peaceful sleep. Alina found herself following these scent trails, allowing the moving air to guide her through spaces she hadn't yet fully explored. The breezes seemed to know the villa's secrets, leading her to hidden alcoves and secret gardens that revealed new aspects of the ancient sanctuary's beauty. In one small courtyard, she discovered how the villa's designers had created a natural wind harp by positioning metal elements in just the right places to catch the evening breezes. The resulting sounds were subtle and musical, not quite melody, but something more fundamental, like the earth itself humming a lullaby. Alina stood still and listened to these wind songs, feeling them resonate not just in her ears, but in her chest, her bones, her very cells. The breezes also interacted with the villa's water features in ways that enhanced their cooling and soothing effects. As the moving air passed over the fountains and pools, it picked up moisture and carried it throughout the complex, creating a natural humidification system that made the evening air feel soft and silky against the skin. Alina could feel this moisture-laden air caressing her face and arms, providing relief from the dryness that often accompanies Mediterranean evenings. She found herself naturally adjusting her movements to work with these air currents rather than against them. When a gentle breeze stirred, she would pause and allow it to flow around her, feeling it lift the heat from her skin and carry away the last vestiges of tension from her muscles. The breezes seemed to have healing properties beyond their physical cooling effects, as if they could literally blow away stress and worry, along with physical discomfort. The villa's architecture had been designed to channel and direct these breezes in ways that maximized their beneficial effects. Corridors were positioned to create wind tunnels that drew cooling air through the living spaces. Courtyards were shaped to trap and circulate breezes, preventing stagnation while maintaining gentle air movement. Every opening, every wall, every change in elevation had been calculated to work with the natural wind patterns of the site. Alina discovered a long, covered walkway that had been designed as a breezeway. Its open sides and carefully positioned columns creating a wind tunnel that was both functional and beautiful. As she walked slowly through this corridor, the breeze flowed around her like a river of cool air, providing immediate relief from any residual heat, while creating a sense of movement and life that was deeply invigorating to her spirit. The walkway opened onto a garden courtyard where the evening breezes had stirred the plants into gentle motion, creating a living symphony of rustling leaves and swaying flowers. Alina settled onto a stone bench, positioned to catch the maximum benefit of the air movement. Feeling the breeze flow over and around her like a gentle massage that touched every part of her body simultaneously. From this position, she could observe how the breezes interacted with the various elements of the villa to create an ever-changing, but always harmonious sensory environment. The moving air carried sounds as well as scents, bringing the distant murmur of fountains from other courtyards, the soft rustle of leaves from unseen gardens, the gentle whoosh of wind moving through stone corridors and arched openings. These sound effects created a natural audio environment that was both stimulating and relaxing, complex enough to be interesting, but gentle enough to promote peace and rest. Alina found herself breathing in rhythm with the wind sounds, her nervous system naturally synchronizing with the rhythms of the moving air. The breezes seemed to be teaching her body how to breathe more deeply, more completely, more peacefully. As the night deepened, the breezes began to carry new scents from plants that released their fragrances primarily in the cooling air of evening. Night blooming, jasmine opened its star-shaped flowers and released clouds of intoxicating perfume that the moving air carried throughout the villa. Evening primrose added its sweet fragrance to the mix, creating aromatic combinations that were almost narcotic in their effect on Alina's nervous system. The breezes also carried the sounds of night creatures beginning their evening activities. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called softly, its voice carried on the moving air like a gentle blessing. Crickets began their rhythmic chorus, their sounds woven into the wind's song to create a natural lullaby that seemed designed to guide the listener into peaceful sleep. Alina realized that she was experiencing one of the most sophisticated natural air conditioning systems ever created. The Romans had understood that true comfort involves not just temperature control, but the creation of gentle air movement that supports the body's natural cooling and breathing processes. They had designed the villa to work with the natural wind patterns of the site, creating an environment that was both climatically comfortable and psychologically soothing. The moving air seemed to carry away more than just heat and humidity. As the breezes flowed around her, Alina felt them lifting away the weight of accumulated stress, the burden of unfinished tasks, the anxiety about future challenges that had been her constant companions for so long. The wind was performing a kind of spiritual cleansing, leaving her feeling lighter, cleaner, more present, and aware than she had felt in years. As the night breezes continued their gentle work, Alina found herself sinking deeper and deeper into a state of profound relaxation and peace. The moving air was both energizing and calming, both stimulating and restful, a perfect balance that seemed to support every aspect of her being's need for restoration and renewal. Chapter 8: Stars Above Ancient Courtyards. As the last traces of sunset faded from the western sky, a canopy of stars began to emerge above the villa's courtyards, transforming the already magical space into something that seemed to connect directly with the infinite. Alina lay back on a cushioned stone platform in the central courtyard, her eyes adjusting to the darkness and gradually beginning to perceive the celestial display that was unfolding above her with the same patient grace that characterized everything about this ancient sanctuary. The villa's position on the hillside, away from any modern sources of light pollution, provided an ideal viewing point for the night sky. As her eyes adapted to the darkness, Alina began to see more and more stars emerging from what had initially appeared to be an empty black void. First, the brightest stars appeared, then medium bright ones, and finally, the faintest stars began to show themselves, until the entire sky was alive with points of light that seemed to dance and shimmer in the clear Mediterranean air. The Romans who had built this villa would have known these same stars, would have looked up at this same celestial display on countless peaceful evenings over the centuries. The villa was actively inhabited. Alina felt a profound connection with these ancient star watchers, sensing that she was participating in a ritual of contemplation that connected her across the centuries with all those who had found peace and wonder beneath this same starry sky. The courtyard where she lay had been designed with stargazing in mind. The walls were low enough not to obstruct the view of the horizon, but high enough to create a sense of enclosure and intimacy. The stone platform on which she rested was positioned at the perfect angle for comfortable viewing. Its surface, still warm from the day's sun, but cooling gradually in the night air. The gentle warmth rising from the stones created subtle air currents that seemed to make the stars shimmer and dance even more beautifully. As Alina's eyes became more sensitive to the starlight, she began to notice how the celestial illumination interacted with the villa's architecture and landscaping. The pale stone walls and pathways seemed to glow softly in the starlight, creating a gentle luminescence that made navigation possible without any artificial lighting. The water in the fountains and pools reflected the stars, creating multiple layers of celestial beauty that made it seem as if she were surrounded by the night sky, rather than simply looking up at it. The sound environment of the villa at night was as carefully orchestrated as its daytime symphony. The fountains continued their gentle songs, but their voices seemed softer and more intimate in the darkness, creating an acoustic backdrop that enhanced rather than competed with the profound silence of the night. Crickets had begun their rhythmic chorus, their sounds weaving together with the water music to create a natural soundscape that seemed designed to slow the heartbeat and deepen the breathing. Alina found herself breathing in rhythm with these night sounds, her entire nervous system gradually downshifting into the deepest states of relaxation she had ever experienced. The combination of the warm stone beneath her, the cool night air above, the gentle sounds surrounding her, and the infinite sky overhead created a sensory environment that seemed to dissolve the boundaries between herself and the larger universe. As she lay beneath the stars, Alina began to notice patterns and movements in the sky that she had never taken time to observe before. Some stars seemed to pulse gently with their own rhythms, their light varying slightly in intensity in ways that created a visual music. Shooting stars occasionally streaked across the sky, their brief flames of light adding moments of surprise and wonder to the steady beauty of the fixed stars. The Milky Way became visible as her eyes adapted further to the darkness, appearing as a river of faint light that flowed across the sky from horizon to horizon. Alina had read about the Milky Way, but had never seen it clearly from her light-polluted city environment. Here, beneath the unpolluted Mediterranean sky, it was clearly visible as a luminous band that seemed to connect the Earth with the deepest reaches of space. Watching the slow, stately movement of the stars across the sky, Alina began to sense the rotation of the Earth beneath her in a way she had never experienced before. The stars weren't moving, she was, carried along by the planet's rotation through space at tremendous speed, yet feeling completely still and peaceful on her warm stone platform. The paradox was deeply meditative, creating a sense of being simultaneously in motion and at rest, part of the cosmic dance, yet perfectly centered in the present moment. The constellation patterns that had guided navigators and inspired storytellers for millennia gradually revealed themselves to Alina's adapting vision. She didn't know all their names or stories, but she could see the patterns that had captured human imagination for thousands of years. Each constellation seemed to have its own character and personality, its own contribution to the overall tapestry of the night sky. As the night deepened, Alina noticed that different areas of the villa offered different perspectives on the starry sky. A raised terrace provided an unobstructed view of the northern sky, where the pole star held its steady position while other stars wheeled around it. A sunken garden created the feeling of lying at the bottom of a celestial bowl, with stars visible in every direction. Each viewing area had been designed to offer its own unique relationship with the night sky, its own invitation to cosmic contemplation. The temperature was perfect for extended stargazing, cool enough to be refreshing, but warm enough, with the heat still radiating from the stones, to be completely comfortable. Alina found that she could lie for hours beneath the stars without experiencing any discomfort, her body supported by the perfectly designed stone platform, her spirit nourished by the infinite beauty above. Occasionally, a gentle breeze would stir the air, carrying with it the nighttime fragrances of the villa's gardens. Night blooming, jasmine released its intoxicating perfume in waves, mixing with the ever-present lavender and the green scents of the herbs to create an aromatherapy experience that enhanced the visual beauty of the stars. Alina breathed deeply of these scented breezes, feeling them transport her into even deeper states of peace and wonder. The night sky above the villa was not static, but constantly changing in subtle ways that revealed themselves to patient observation. The moon, though not visible tonight, influenced the overall brightness of the sky and the visibility of the fainter stars. Satellites occasionally moved across the star field, their steady motion distinguishing them from the fixed stars and adding a touch of the modern world to the ancient scene. As Alina lay beneath the stars, she felt her sense of time becoming fluid and elastic. Minutes might have been hours, or hours might have been minutes. The steady beauty of the night sky seemed to exist outside of ordinary temporal experience. She was participating in a rhythm of contemplation that was as old as human consciousness itself, a practice of star watching that connected her with every generation of humans who had ever looked up at the night sky and felt wonder, peace, and a sense of belonging to something infinitely larger than themselves. The The stars continued their ancient dance above the villa's courtyards, and Alina, cradled by warm stone and cooled by gentle breezes, felt herself becoming part of that cosmic rhythm. Her breathing, her heartbeat, her very consciousness synchronizing with the vast, peaceful patterns of the universe above. Chapter 9: The Villa's Ancient Rhythms. In the deep quiet of the night, as Alina lay beneath the star-filled sky, she began to perceive something that went beyond the individual beauty of the villa's gardens, fountains, and architecture. It was as if all the separate elements of this ancient sanctuary were revealing themselves to be part of a larger, unified rhythm, a pulse of life and peace that had been beating steadily for nearly 2,000 years and was now gradually synchronizing with her own heartbeat and breathing. The realization came slowly, like dawn breaking over the consciousness. Alina noticed that her breathing had naturally aligned with the gentle bubbling of the central fountain. Her heartbeat seemed to echo the soft dripping of water from one basin to another. Even her thoughts had begun to move in rhythm with the subtle sounds and movements of the night around her. The whisper of leaves in the gentle breeze, the distant call of an owl, the almost inaudible hum of the earth itself. This synchronization wasn't something she had consciously attempted. Rather, it seemed to be the natural result of spending time in a place that had been specifically designed to promote this kind of deep harmony between human beings and their environment. The villa was revealing itself to be not just a beautiful space, but a healing instrument, finely tuned to support the human nervous system's natural capacity for peace and restoration. Alina rose from her stargazing platform and began to walk slowly through the villa's courtyards and gardens, her movements naturally falling into rhythm with the ancient pulses she was beginning to perceive. Each step seemed to connect her more deeply with the life force that flowed through this place. Not just the obvious life of the plants and water features, but something more fundamental, more enduring, more connected to the essential rhythms of existence itself. The fountains, she realized, were not just decorative features, but crucial components in the villa's larger system of rhythmic healing. Each fountain had its own tempo, its own voice, its own contribution to the overall symphony of peace that filled the space. The central fountain maintained a steady, calming rhythm that served as the foundation for all the others. Smaller fountains added variations and harmonies, creating a complex but perfectly balanced acoustic environment that naturally guided the listener into deeper and deeper states of relaxation. As Alina moved through the gardens, she began to notice how the plants themselves participated in these ancient rhythms. The herbs released their fragrances in subtle waves that seemed to correspond with the movements of the air and the cycles of the earth. The night-blooming flowers opened and closed according to their own internal clocks, adding their perfumes to the mix at precisely the right moments to enhance the overall effect. Even the stones beneath her feet seemed to pulse gently with stored energy from the day's sun, releasing their warmth in rhythms that matched her walking pace and supported her body's natural need for comfort and stability. The villa was teaching her that true healing comes not from any single element, but from the harmony of all elements working together in perfect synchronization. Alina found herself drawn to the sunken garden where she had experienced such peace earlier in the day. Now, in the deep quiet of the night, this circular sanctuary revealed new aspects of its power to promote inner harmony. The enclosed space seemed to amplify and focus the villa's rhythmic energies, creating a natural meditation chamber where the various pulses of life could be felt more clearly and integrated more deeply. She descended the stone steps into the circular garden and settled onto the central platform, feeling immediately how the enclosed space seemed to cradle and support her entire being. The walls of the garden created acoustic properties that enhanced the subtle sounds of the fountains and breezes, while also creating a sense of privacy and safety that allowed her nervous system to relax even more completely. From this centered position, Alina could perceive the villa's rhythms as a unified whole. The water sounds, the plant fragrances, the warmth radiating from the stones, the gentle movement of the air, all of these elements were revealing themselves to be part of a larger pattern, a master rhythm that had been designed by minds that understood the deepest principles of healing and restoration. She began to understand that the Romans who had created this villa were not just skilled architects and engineers, but also profound students of human nature and the conditions that promote optimal health and happiness. They had observed that human beings are fundamentally rhythmic creatures. Our hearts beat in rhythm. Our lungs expand and contract in rhythm. Our brains operate in rhythmic cycles of activity and rest. They had designed the villa to support and enhance these natural rhythms rather than disrupting them. As Alina sat in the heart of the sunken garden, she felt these ancient rhythms working their subtle magic on every system in her body. Her breathing became deeper and more regular. Her heart rate slowed to match the peaceful tempo of the fountains. Her thoughts quieted and became more spacious, no longer racing frantically from one concern to another, but moving with the same unhurried grace that characterized everything about this extraordinary place. The night air carried new fragrances as different plants released their healing compounds into the darkness. Some scents were immediately recognizable the sharp clarity of rosemary, the sweet comfort of chamomile, the gentle sedative properties of lavender. Others were more subtle and complex, ancient herb varieties, whose names she didn't know, but whose effects she could feel working directly on her nervous system. Alina realized that she was experiencing a form of healing that was both ancient and completely natural, the restoration that comes when human beings align themselves with the fundamental rhythms of life instead of fighting against them. The villa had been designed as a sanctuary where this alignment could occur naturally and effortlessly, where the very environment itself would guide visitors into states of harmony and peace. As the night deepened around her, Alina felt something fundamental shifting in her relationship with time itself. Instead of the linear, goal-oriented experience of time that dominated her usual life, she was beginning to experience time as circular, cyclical, rhythmic. Each moment was complete in itself, not just a stepping stone to some future achievement, but a perfect expression of peace and beauty that deserved to be fully experienced and appreciated. The villa's ancient rhythms were teaching her a new way of being in the world, not constantly striving and pushing, but moving in harmony with natural cycles. Not always doing, but sometimes simply being. Not seeking peace somewhere else, but discovering it right here, right now, in this perfect moment of connection with the eternal rhythms that sustain all life. Alina felt her consciousness gradually expanding to encompass not just her individual experience, but the larger rhythms of which she was a part. Her breathing synchronized with the wind in the trees. Her heartbeat echoed the pulse of the fountains. Her thoughts moved in harmony with the ancient wisdom that had shaped this place and continued to flow through it like an invisible river of peace as she sat in the embrace of the villa's rhythmic healing. Alina understood that she was receiving a gift that would extend far beyond her time in this ancient sanctuary. The rhythms she was learning here, the rhythm of deep breathing, of patient observation, of peaceful presence, were rhythms she could carry with her wherever she went. The villa was not just giving her a temporary respite from stress, but teaching her a way of living that could transform every moment of her existence. The ancient rhythms continued their patient work around her and within her, gradually synchronizing every aspect of her being with the timeless patterns of peace and restoration that had been blessing human hearts in this sacred place for nearly 2 millennia. Chapter 10: Deep Restoration and Inner Peace. As the night reached its deepest hour, Alina found herself entering a state of consciousness that transcended ordinary relaxation and approached something she could only call sacred. Every element of the villa, its sounds, scents, textures, and rhythms, had worked together throughout her time here to guide her into progressively deeper states of peace. And now, she was experiencing the culmination of this ancient healing process. The transformation had been so gradual that she was only now beginning to recognize how profound it had been. The woman who had arrived at the villa earlier that day, carrying the weight of accumulated stress and the restless urgency of modern life, seemed like a distant memory. In her place was someone who had remembered what it felt like to be truly at rest, truly present, truly aligned with the natural rhythms of existence. Alina moved through the villa's courtyards and gardens with a new quality of awareness, her senses heightened yet peaceful, her mind clear yet calm. Each breath seemed to draw in not just air, but the very essence of tranquility that permeated this ancient place. Each step connected her more deeply with the earth beneath her feet and the accumulated wisdom of all those who had walked these same paths before her. In the herb garden, she paused beside plants that now seemed to glow with their own inner light. The healing properties of these ancient herbs felt accessible to her, not just through their fragrances, but through some deeper form of communication, as if the plants themselves were sharing their accumulated wisdom about the nature of peace and restoration. She knelt beside a particularly ancient lavender bush, its woody stems thick with decades of slow growth in this blessed place. As she breathed in its fragrance, Alina felt the plant's patient energy flowing into her own being, teaching her about the deep peace that comes from growing slowly, from being rooted in good soil, from blooming in harmony with natural cycles rather than forcing growth according to artificial timelines. The lavender seemed to whisper ancient secrets about the nature of healing, how it happens not through force or effort, but through creating the right conditions, and then allowing natural processes to unfold in their own time. Alina felt this wisdom settling into her bones, becoming part of her own understanding of how to live and heal and find peace in an often chaotic world. Moving deeper into the garden, she discovered that her relationship with the water features had also transformed. The fountains no longer seemed like separate objects to be observed, but like extensions of her own inner landscape. The rhythm of the bubbling water matched the rhythm of her breathing so perfectly that she couldn't tell where the sound ended and her own life force began. Alina settled beside the central fountain and placed her hands in the cool water, feeling an immediate sense of connection with the underground springs that fed the villa's entire water system. The water flowing over her fingers seemed to carry with it the memory of its journey through deep earth, through limestone caves, through hidden aquifers that had been slowly filtering and purifying this water for hundreds of years. before it emerged into the light of the villa's gardens. As she cupped the water in her hands and brought it to her face, Alina felt she was receiving not just physical refreshment, but a kind of liquid peace that flowed directly into her bloodstream and nervous system. The water seemed to carry within it the essence of all the healing that had taken place in this villa over the centuries, as if every person who had ever found peace here had left something of their restored well-being in the water itself. The villa's thermal environment had also taken on new meaning for Alina. The warm stones no longer simply felt comfortable. They felt alive with accumulated solar energy that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her own life force. As she walked across the sun-warmed courtyards, Alina felt supported not just physically, but spiritually, as if the earth itself was offering its strength and stability to help her maintain the deep peace she had discovered. She found herself drawn to one of the villa's sleeping chambers, a room that opened directly onto a small private garden through tall arched doorways. The room was simple but perfect, with a raised sleeping platform made of the same warm stone as the courtyards, cushioned with soft fabrics that had absorbed the day's warmth and the evening's fragrances. Alina settled onto this ancient bed, feeling immediately how it had been designed to provide the ideal environment for restorative sleep. The stone platform retained just enough warmth to be comforting without being too hot. The height of the sleeping surface allowed cooling breezes to flow beneath it, creating natural air circulation that prevented stuffiness while maintaining comfort. The position of the room ensured that the sleeper would wake to the gentle light of dawn rather than harsh, direct sunlight. As she lay on the sleeping platform, Alina could hear the layered sounds of the villa's night symphony, fountains bubbling in different rhythms, breezes stirring the herb gardens, the distant call of night birds, the gentle creaking of ancient wood settling into the cooling air. These sounds wove together to create a natural lullaby that seemed designed to guide the listener into the deepest, most restorative levels of sleep. But more than just physical comfort, Alina was experiencing something that could only be described as soul rest. The villa had created conditions not just for her body to relax, but for her deepest self to emerge from the protective shell it had built around itself during years of stress and hurry. She felt layers of emotional armor dissolving, replaced by a profound trust in the essential goodness and safety of existence. This inner transformation was perhaps the villa's greatest gift. Alina realized that she had spent years unconsciously bracing herself against life, treating each day as a challenge to be overcome rather than an opportunity to be savored. The villa had taught her, through its patient example of enduring beauty and peace, that there was another way to exist in the world, with grace, with presence, with deep appreciation for the simple gifts of water and stone and growing things. As she lay in the ancient sleeping chamber, Alina felt her consciousness naturally shifting towards sleep. But it was a different kind of sleep than she had experienced in years. Instead of the exhausted collapse that had become her usual end to the day, this was a conscious, peaceful transition into rest, a gentle letting go that felt more like floating than falling. The villa's healing rhythms continued their work, even as Alina's conscious awareness began to fade. Her breathing naturally synchronized with the fountain sounds. Her heartbeat slowed to match the ancient tempo of this timeless place. Her nervous system downshifted into the deepest states of rest and repair, supported by every element of the environment that surrounded her. In her drifting consciousness, Alina felt profoundly grateful for the gift she had received. The villa had reminded her of truths she had forgotten. That peace is the natural state of the human heart when it is not disturbed by artificial stresses. That healing happens naturally when the right conditions are provided. That human beings are designed to live in harmony with the rhythms of the natural world rather than fighting against them. As sleep finally claimed her completely, Alina carried with her the deep knowing that the peace she had found here was not dependent on this particular place, but was a capacity that lived within her own being. The villa had simply created the conditions for her to rediscover what had been there all along: her own innate ability to rest, to heal, to find joy in simple beauty, to move through the world with grace and presence rather than anxiety and hurry. The ancient stones continued to radiate their gentle warmth throughout the night. The fountains maintained their peaceful songs. The herbs released their healing fragrances into the darkness, and Alina, cradled in the embrace of this timeless sanctuary, experienced the deepest, most restorative sleep of her life, her entire being regenerating and renewing itself in preparation for a new way of living that honored the ancient rhythms of peace she had learned in this sacred place. Chapter 11, Epilogue, carrying ancient peace into the modern world. Dawn came slowly to the villa, announced not by harsh alarms or sudden brightness, but by the gradual lightening of the eastern sky and the gentle warming of the stone platforms and courtyards. Alina woke naturally, her body's circadian rhythms perfectly synchronized with the sun's daily journey after her night of profound rest in harmony with the villa's ancient healing environment. As she opened her eyes, Alina immediately noticed that something fundamental had changed in her relationship with the act of waking itself. Instead of the jarring transition from unconsciousness to anxiety, that had characterized her mornings for years. This awakening felt like a gentle flowering, a natural unfolding that honored the wisdom of her body's own rhythms and needs. She lay quietly on the warm stone sleeping platform for several minutes, simply appreciating the quality of peace that filled her entire being. The deep rest she had experienced had done more than just refresh her physically. It had restored something essential in her spirit that she had almost forgotten existed. She felt truly rested for the first time in years, not just in her body, but in her mind, her emotions, her very soul. Rising slowly, Alina stepped onto the sun-warmed stones of the courtyard outside her sleeping chamber. The morning air was crisp and clean, carrying the fresh fragrances of the villa's gardens and the sound of fountains that had continued their gentle songs throughout the night. As she walked barefoot across the ancient stones, she felt each step connecting her with the accumulated peace of this place, anchoring the transformation she had experienced deep within her cellular memory. The villa looked different in the morning light, not changed in any physical way, but revealed more clearly as the healing sanctuary it truly was. Alina could now see how every element had been carefully chosen and positioned to support the kind of deep restoration she had experienced. The placement of the fountains, the selection of the herbs, the angles of the walls, the warmth of the stones, all of it had worked together to create conditions where healing could happen naturally and effortlessly. As she made her way to the central fountain for her morning ablutions, Alina realized that she was preparing to carry the gift of this experience back into her ordinary world. The villa had given her more than just a respite from stress. It had taught her a way of being that could transform every aspect of her daily life. The rhythms of peace she had learned here, the rhythm of deep breathing, of patient presence, of appreciation for simple beauty, were rhythms she could maintain wherever she went. She knelt beside the fountain and cupped the cool water in her hands, drinking deeply and washing her face with the same reverent attention she had learned to bring to every action during her time here. The water seemed to carry within it a blessing, a benediction that would help her remember the peace she had found and maintain her connection to the ancient wisdom of this place. The herbs in the surrounding gardens seemed to offer their own farewell gifts as Alina walked among them one final time. The lavender released a particularly rich fragrance as the morning sun warmed its flowers. The rosemary sparkled with dew that caught the early light like tiny diamonds. Each plant seemed to be offering its essence as a reminder, a sensory memory that she could carry with her and return to whenever she needed to reconnect with the peace she had discovered here. Alina understood now that the villa's true gift was not its physical beauty, extraordinary as that was. But its demonstration that peace is always available to those who know how to create the right conditions for it. The villa had shown her that healing environments can be created anywhere, in a single room, in a small garden, even in the space of a few conscious breaths taken in harmony with natural rhythms. As she prepared to leave, Alina felt no sadness or sense of ending. Instead, she felt a profound gratitude and a quiet excitement about the possibility of integrating what she had learned into her daily life. The villa had reminded her that she was capable of living with grace, presence, and deep appreciation for the simple gifts of existence. It had shown her that peace was not a luxury to be enjoyed only during special retreats, but a natural state that could be cultivated and maintained through conscious attention to the conditions that support well-being. The path that led away from the villa was the same one she had walked the day before, but Alina's relationship with it had been completely transformed. Where she had once walked with the urgency of someone seeking relief from stress, she now moved with the measured pace of someone who had found what she was looking for and was in no hurry to lose it again. Each step away from the villa was also a step toward integration, toward the challenge and opportunity of maintaining the peace she had found while engaging with the demands of her ordinary world. Alina felt confident that she could meet this challenge, not because the problems of modern life had disappeared, but because she had been reminded of resources within herself that were more powerful than any external stressor. The olive trees that lined the path seemed to offer their own blessing as she passed beneath their ancient branches. These trees, some of them centuries old, had weathered countless storms and seasons while maintaining their essential character and continuing to produce their fruits. They stood as living examples of the kind of resilience and grace that Alina hoped to embody, the ability to remain rooted in peace while weathering whatever storms life might bring. As the villa disappeared behind the curve of the hillside, Alina paused to look back one final time. What she saw was not just a beautiful ancient building, but a teacher, a healing sanctuary that had reminded her of truths about peace and restoration that were as relevant today as they had been 2,000 years ago. The villa would continue its patient work, offering its gifts to other seekers who found their way to its stone courtyards and herb gardens. But Alina knew that she carried its essential wisdom within her now. The morning sun climbed higher in the Mediterranean sky as Alina continued along the ancient path, her steps light and sure, her breathing deep and peaceful, her heart filled with gratitude for the profound gift she had received. She was returning to her ordinary world, but she was not the same person who had left it. She carried within her now the ancient rhythms of peace the wisdom of stone and water and growing things, and the deep knowing that true rest and restoration are always available to those who know how to listen to the eternal songs of healing that flow through every moment of existence. The villa's fountains continued their gentle conversations with stone and sky. Its herbs continued to release their healing fragrances. Its ancient stones continued to store and release the warmth of the Mediterranean sun. And somewhere in the modern world, Alina carried forward the gifts of this timeless sanctuary, living proof that the ancient arts of peace and restoration are not lost, but simply waiting to be rediscovered by anyone wise enough to seek them and patient enough to receive their transformative power. In her heart, Alina knew that she would return to the villa someday. But she also knew that the most important journey was the one that led inward, to the place where the villa's deepest gifts could take root and flourish in the soil of daily life. The ancient rhythms of peace were hers now, not as a memory of a perfect place and time, but as a living presence that would guide her steps and slow her breathing and open her heart to the beauty and possibility that surrounded her in every moment. The villa had given her the greatest gift of all, the remembrance of her own capacity for peace, her own ability to create conditions for healing wherever she found herself, her own deep connection to the timeless rhythms that sustain all life. And as she walked forward into her transformed future, Alina carried that gift like a light that would never be extinguished, a source of warmth and peace that would bless not only her own life, but the lives of all those she would touch with the gentle wisdom she had learned in the embrace of the ancient stones.